For centuries, the Roman Empire was the crown jewel of medieval Europe, a sprawling, complex political system that claimed authority over hundreds of territories, dukedoms, and principalities. But despite its grandeur and the ambition of its emperors, the empire struggled to maintain real centralized control. By the 17th century, the authority of the emperor had weakened dramatically, leaving the empire a fragmented patchwork of semi-independent states. How did a political system designed to unite Europe instead collapse into decentralization and internal division? The answer lies in centuries of political compromise, religious conflict, and structural weakness, a story of ambition, compromise, and the limits of centralized power. Before we dive into the complexities of empire, if you enjoy deep historical documentaries about politics, power, and civilization, subscribe and hit the bell for more deep dives. The Roman Empire was formally established in 800 CE, when Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III. This moment symbolized the fusion of Roman, Christian, and Germanic traditions into a new political entity. The emperor was intended to be the supreme authority in Europe, overseeing a vast territory stretching across modern Germany, Austria, Switzerland, northern Italy, and parts of France. The empire was built on the idea of universal authority, combining religious legitimacy from the Pope with political leadership over numerous kingdoms and principalities. However, the very structure that gave the Roman Empire its grandeur also sowed the seeds of its decentralization. Unlike a modern nation-state, the empire relied heavily on vassals, electors, and regional princes. The emperor did not have the same direct control over territory or tax revenue as a centralized monarchy would. Instead, he depended on negotiation, alliances, and the support of powerful nobles to exercise authority. This decentralized structure would become a defining characteristic and a central problem of the empire. One of the most important innovations of the empire was the electoral system, formalized in the Golden Bull of 1356. This law gave a small group of powerful princes, archbishops, and electors the right to choose the emperor. While this system was intended to create stability and legitimacy, it also limited imperial authority. Emperors were beholden to the electors for their position, which meant that they had to negotiate constantly to maintain loyalty. No emperor could simply issue orders and expect them to be followed across the empire. Regional rulers often acted independently, collected their own taxes, maintained private armies, and pursued their own foreign policies. Even the most ambitious emperors, like Frederick Barbarossa, spent decades fighting internal power struggles rather than unifying the empire. Over time, the elective monarchy reinforced the power of the regional princes while weakening central authority. Central authority suffered another major blow in the 16th century with the rise of the Protestant Reformation. The teachings of Martin Luther challenged not only the authority of the Catholic Church, but also the emperor's ability to impose uniform religious and political control. As princes converted to Lutheranism or other Protestant faiths, they gained ideological independence that further eroded imperial power. The Peace of Augsburg in 1555, which allowed rulers to choose the religion of their own territories, codified this decentralization. The emperor could no longer enforce a single religious policy, creating a patchwork of Protestant and Catholic regions. Religious division intertwined with political fragmentation, making it almost impossible for emperors to exert consistent authority across the empire. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, exemplified how fragile central authority had become. What began as a religious conflict between Protestants and Catholics quickly became a continental power struggle, involving France, Spain, Sweden, and the Habsburg emperors. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648 formally recognized the sovereignty of the empire's constituent states. Princes and electors gained near-complete autonomy, while the emperor retained little real power outside his hereditary lands. After Westphalia, the Roman Empire became less a unified political entity and more a confederation of independent states, each with its own army, diplomacy, and taxation. Central authority had effectively collapsed, though the imperial title continued to exist ceremonially. Several structural factors explain why the empire could never regain centralized control. The centralized governance. The empire's reliance on princes, electors, and vassals meant the emperor lacked coercive power over large regions. Elective monarchy. Emperors depended on nobles for election, limiting their ability to impose central authority. Religious pluralism. The Reformation legally recognized regional sovereignty in matters of faith, weakening ideological cohesion. Geographic diversity. The empire spanned mountains, rivers, and forests, making communication and enforcement difficult. Economic autonomy of states. Many territories had independent trade networks and tax systems, reducing imperial leverage. Together, these factors made centralized control structurally impossible, regardless of the emperor's skill or ambition. By the 18th century, the Roman Empire existed more as a symbolic institution than a political reality. Emperors still held prestige and titles, but real power rested with local rulers. The empire's fragmentation had long-term consequences for European history. It slowed the development of a unified German state until the 19th century. It allowed regional cultures, laws, and political institutions to flourish independently. It created a precedent for negotiated sovereignty and decentralization in Europe. While the Roman Empire may have failed to maintain central authority, it demonstrates the limits of medieval power systems and the challenges of governing diverse, multi-ethnic territories without modern administrative tools. The Roman Empire was born with ambition, religious legitimacy, and historical prestige. Yet, centuries of political compromise, the rise of local powers, religious fragmentation, and structural weaknesses ensured that central authority could never be fully realized. Its story is a lesson in the complexities of governance, showing that even the most majestic empires can fragment when authority is dispersed and loyalties are divided. By understanding how the Roman Empire lost central authority, we gain insight into the limits of power, the impact of religion on politics, and the historical roots of decentralized European states, lessons that remain relevant even in the modern world.